Hello, hero. It's Lucy Lannon. I never did like the term light worker. Grottons work in the dark and deep, where the glow moss grows and the crawlies creep. For one reason or another, I've been having a lot of salt baths recently. I've been doing a lot of prayers to Michael recently, or things that are a little older that would take the name Michael now and are easily accessed through things like Christian prayer, right? This is why we have a Michael on the altar, and he's wingless, partly by accident, but nothing's an accident, and partly to remind me that when vanquishing personal demons, I must remember that even as an agent of something greater, I am a flesh vessel. I am here in the circumstances within which I find myself, and I have to do the best I can with what I'm able to do and leave the rest to something higher and more capable. Let me just check on that incense because it's making a funny noise. Stuff around you may be doing a kind of Mercury retrograde thing at the moment, although as I film this, we're out of the retrograde and we won't have one live for a while now, for a few months, so depends when you're watching as to whether that is the case. When I think of Mercury, I think of messages and I think of angelic messengers, and then I think back to Michael as one of the four sort of famous ones, I guess, particularly in Eurocentric magical circles, and in the last 200 or so years of that anyway, when it's all sort of been reappropriated. So there may be something there. If you're experiencing lights flickering, glitches, things not being on when they should be, things turning off, things turning on in the middle of the night, songs playing at random, right? That's something I'm being pulled to say because I once had an experience where a family member of someone I was out of contact with was trying to get in touch with me about that person, and they kept turning on my laptop in sleep mode and playing a song to me over and over again, which wasn't even open, right? So there's something there like that for some of you. If it's you, hit me up in the comments, but if it's not you, it's fine, just let it fly because I'm reading for a ton of people right now. I can't remember what I'd said, but yeah, we're dealing with defense today. I want to call it protection, but it is also defense. And those two words and the way that they intersect and relate to each other are going to be quite important. I also want to mention that we've got the Death Mother with us, particularly the Baba Yaga because of the poppy on her, right? This is from Whitby as well, so that may be relevant to some of you. It may be like a confirmation thing if you've always wanted to go there or if you've recently been. Lovely place. Or it used to be anyway. I haven't been for a while, that's not a comment on how it is now. And we've got a scorpion because they can't help but sting. I can't remember whether I said that in the beginning. Are you feeling mind scrambled right now? Because I feel the room is very smoky, everything's a bit sort of glitchy. It's confused, and that's not me because I just had a salt bath. I've cleansed and protected all this table, I've said loads of prayers, I've worked through some psalms. Everything is as it should be where I am. So I feel like if I'm picking up on your energy, you're a bit out of sorts, right? This may be why you found me. This morning when I did take the salt bath, I immediately got a message saying, it's not about looking at where this energy is coming from, even if you know, right? Many of you do. It's not about looking to what they've said, what they've done, what the circumstances are that are a bit adverse at the moment. Maybe that's, space weather, maybe it's something more direct in your life, like somebody's actions, who knows. But it's not about looking to what needs defending or in what way. It's about embodying the spirit of protection, being in a space where you feel protected all the time. So you're not calling in an archangel from outside, right? Because we're all linked, it's not outside. You're saying Grottons work in the dark and deep. You're already in the dark and deep. You're happy without a lamp. without an illumination, without a flaming sword or a lightsaber if you prefer, because you are always protected. It makes me think of that really cheesy meme about being the witch in the woods that everything else is scared of, right? And again, that's a bit edgelord and a bit sort of maybe even vengeance-y, or a bit sort of fuck you too, in a way that I dislike. We don't want to do that, but we certainly want to feel powerful. We want to feel like our every step we're wearing an invisible iridescent suit of armour, and that it's not like we're going to go into battle, but it's impressive enough that people look at us and go, yeah, I'm not going to try you. Not today, right? For some of you, not today, Satan, will resonate. However, you know, tradcraft devil makes me sort of counter that. But anyway, not the devil, don't come at me, Christians. Speaking of you guys, I'm really sorry if any of you are so staunchly pagan and or relatively misinformed about early tradcraft and cunning praxis, certainly in Europe, that you're very anti-Christian, because I'm going to go full Christian for a moment on you, because I believe that the force flows through all paradigms and that everything is relevant. Christians, Satanists, pagans, Wiccans, unaffiliated people of every kind, Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, you know, Muslims, we're all kind of following the same compass. Damn, that took a long time to get to. You guys are really addled right now. Scream with me for a second. 3, 2, 1. I've done that in years. That wasn't even a fear scream either, it was like a rage scream. So some of you are feeling kind of angry and like frustrated and fuck you, and it's all sort of building up in that sense, yeah? And it sounded a bit screech, didn't it? It sounded a bit impotent, a bit embarrassing. So again, it speaks to this thing of, do you feel powerful? Like, I feel relieved for having done it, but also a little embarrassed that it even happened. I really think if you didn't scream with me just then, you need to at some point, all right? Maybe save this for later. And I'm sorry about your ears if you're in a place where you couldn't. I got directed as well to Psalm 39 when I got this message through earlier. So we're going to just sort of skim through it and see what comes out in terms of stuff that might be relevant information for you at this time. I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue. When we talk about sin, let's not get complex. Let's just say that I don't go against my highest good with my tongue, right? So you're looking at the way that you're speaking because somebody else's speech about you has alerted you to the fact that fuckery is afoot. I will keep my mouth with a bridle where the wicked is before me. This is also about not speaking up around someone who is potentially dangerous. Some of you are dealing with people that you know are pathological in some way, narcissistic in some way, something like that. I'm not going to sort of encourage those labels for a person because, again, we're looking at our energy within. We're not pushing stuff without. We're not projecting onto other people. We're not blaming other people and saying that all of our circumstances are everything else's fault, right? But what I would say from this is that it might be that you need to keep this to yourself, or I'm the first person you're seeking out for help with this, possibly, because you know that you can't articulate to other people what this person's been doing because it's quite covert, or because you're in a situation where you can't necessarily put it on a person, but you feel like speaking up about it might make you look bad, or might put you in a less beneficial position than the one which you were at, right? I was done with silence, I held my peace even from good, and my sorrow was stirred. So it's like you can't even be thankful for the good in your life right now. this thing, even if it's just like an atmosphere of, I want to say malaise, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, but even just this vibe that you've been feeling is potent enough that you feel you can't give genuine gratitude from your heart or indeed from your gut, right? You may be going through the motions of things like a gratitude practice, but not really feeling in your heart of hearts that your life is where you want it to be. And you either can't put your finger on why that is, or you're linking the lack of things to a specific person in the way that we discussed. My heart was hot within me while I was musing the fire burned, then spake I with my tongue. You want to speak up right now. You're on the verge of saying something, right? Because you feel passionate about this situation. Lord, make me to know mine end and the measure of my days, what it is that I may know how frail I am. For some of you, there is somebody close to you passing away at the moment, or you've recently endured a bereavement or some kind of near-death experience yourself, and you're kind of grappling with the realities of this, which is another reason we have the Death Mother, right? And indeed the iron nails, which, again, sort of by accident. For others of you, this is just that this situation or this relationship to this person or a bit of subterfuge on the part of somebody else has made you kind of realise that things are more fragile than you put them before, than you placed them, sorry. Behold, thou hast made my days as an handbreadth, and mine age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. It makes me think of the Vanitas paintings, right, where they used to put a skull in portraits of people to show that we're all mortal, we're all vulnerable. It's that kind of a vibe. It also makes me think of appropriative but Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai, where he talks about how there's no running between the eaves with the samurai because he's always prepared for rain. Yeah, which again is kind of another way of saying Grotton's work in the dark and deep. Surely every man walketh in a vain shoe, surely they are vain show, surely they are disquieted in vain. He heapeth up riches and knoweth not who shall gather them. You might have had an ego death as well, or somebody close to you might be acting up because they're in theirs. So there's this sense here that it's a sense of and for what, right? You may have heaped up riches, you may have got the best job, the best partner, you may have been able to show off about various things, and for what? Where has it gotten you now? You don't feel protected. You don't feel like holiness embodied. You feel like you need a mediator, in order to bring you messages that really you wanted answering directly in ritual or prayer or some kind of personal practice, even if you don't know what it is. For those of you who are coming to me for a thought experiment as atheists, and I really do appreciate you, this is the sense of like you couldn't be your own embodiment of the perfect self, even though you got all of those trappings covered, right? Dare I say, if there are some Satanists amongst you in the sort of LaVeyan sense, you couldn't become the figure that Satan embodied for you, that sort of good pride, right, on earth of the sort of I've done everything I need to do here and my will is my own and I pray only unto myself. I know this will rub the Christians up the wrong way, but I'm talking to everybody. But it's just like, it's that sense of, you know, if you were looking to false idols or the self as an idol or looking to self-care before you looked outward to religion, there's a sense that all of it wasn't enough in the end and you don't really know how to handle that now. Or if you're dealing with a problematic person or a situation fueled by a person, let's say, this scorpion figure, it might be that that's their current predicament, right? That they put themselves at the centre of things rather than what we would loosely call a higher power. And they sort of did everything on their checkbox of what would make them satisfied by doing that. And it's all led to being kind of not enough. Surely every man walketh in a... Oh no, we've already done that, sorry. There's looping, there's repeating, there's saying the same things over and over to a person who isn't getting it. There's also for some of you memory loss or memories that you want to retrieve or regressions that you want to go back to. Careful there, because it is in the scope of some practitioners, psychological or otherwise, to take you to a place where you're reliving memories in a way of construction and indeed even nostalgia, or like, I want to call it enforced trauma, but there are people who can regress you and kind of help you simulate stuff that wasn't fully there in order that you'll need their services longer, right? I often don't do protection readings or defense readings on this channel, partly because there are so many paradigms as we've demonstrated, but partly because a lot of the readers out there that talk about, oh, you've got enemies here and there's a karmic coming for you and there's this person putting a curse on your ancestral line, all that shit. Most of the time, they just want your repeat custom, right? They just want you to keep coming back because you're so worried. It's using Saturnian fear against somebody is very lucrative. And that goes for religious figures as well as spiritual ones, right? So if you're a church goer and you're coming to me for the first time, you're not exempt. It is a warning for everybody. Just be very careful that the guidance that you're getting is actually guidance, and you'll know because it feels like relief when you've finished it. If you go to a reading and somebody tells you all of these accurate things about what your situation is, and they describe a person in perfect detail, but at the end of the session, you don't feel any more empowered to deal with it than you did, or indeed you feel more worried than you did, that person is not the right teacher or mentor for you. Some of you needed to hear that. And I include myself in that, right? If ever you come for a reading from me, paid or otherwise, and I don't give you fully a sense that you have what you need for the moment, then I've not done my job, okay? So just bear that in mind, it needed to come through for some reason. I'm losing track again, I'm going backwards. And now, Lord, what wait I for? My hope is in thee. Deliver me from all my transgressions. Make me not the reproach of the foolish. There's a thing here about seeing whoever has been irking you as somebody who is flawed and silly and not as someone evil, right? Maybe that's why I had to go the sort of vaguely Christianity route today. Because we're then talking about good and evil, and we're talking historically about a group of people who have been willing to punish what they see as evil by death in pretty pretty remarkable and visceral ways that have stayed with us through history, you know. And I know pagans did it as well, you know. Actually, pretty much every religion or movement has done it in some way, including science, over the course of history. But there is this warning about letting personal morality be so vigilant that you trample on the contracted behaviour of somebody else, their path through the world, which may be to be foolish and flawed, and may even be to aggravate you, to triangulate you, to ruin your reputation, to make your circumstances adverse, for some of you to curse you, all that kind of stuff. And again, I don't want to breed fear when I say that. If it's for you, you'll know. But there's like, understand that they are the scorpion, they are contracted to sting, again with drive, right? I'm sorry this one ended up in resin. For my vegans, this is not mine. It was passed down to me, and I'm very thankful for the life that was given, okay? I was dumb and opened not my mouth because thou didst it. Remove thy stroke away from me, I am consumed by the blow of thine hand. When thou with rebukes dost correct man for iniquity, thou makest his beauty to consume away like a moth. Surely every man is vanity. Again, there is a tower moment for somebody who needs an ego death, who needs all of the trappings of their perfect world that they've sort of created around themselves to fall away, so that they realise that integrity goes a little bit beyond those things. But there's also this warning of, like, again, opening your mouth when it's a bit too soon, or opening your mouth in an emotional or reactive way when that's not going to befit you in the situation. Again, if there's a possibility that some of you are dealing with a narcissist, I have lengthy direct experience of same, and can tell you from that experience that the best thing you can do sometimes is observe in complete silence and try to be as non-reactive as possible, because that person eventually shows themselves up, even to people who they've used against you prior, right? Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear unto my cry. Hold not thy peace at my tears, for I am a stranger with thee, and I can't pronounce this word, sojourner, as all my fathers were. Oh, spare me that I may recover strength before I go hence and be no more. Again, I'm not translating the meaning, I'm just channeling what comes from it. I feel like you guys have been praying or asking or doing ritual work for this, and it's kind of not coming about. And maybe the reason I've got Michael here is because that's your next port of call, or indeed you've been working with Michael in some way. Excellent Bible, by the way, it's a kid's one, and there's loads of explanations of the stories and parables, but it's just really good print and everything. Not sponsored, it's just rad, and I use it for all kinds of psalmic stuff. I won't say more on that right now. All of that basically is intro to the reading, right? But it's to say that we know you're in a pickle. We know that you might have been seeing an increased incidence of creepy crawlies around and in your house, and not just because of the time of year, but because there is a protective totemic element to the things you've been seeing in terms of like maybe stuff that makes your skin crawl a bit, or maybe this sort of scorpionic imagery to show you like, no, this situation is an irritant, right? But it's here for a reason. If we are irritated by, for example, our laundry powder, and we get a horrible rash, and we put it down to that because we sort of narrow down what it could be, then we know by looking at the ingredients in that thing what we can never use again, right? And in that sense, it's a good exercise, providing that we don't have an allergic reaction, providing that the skin survives and we come away healthy and all right. It's actually a fairly positive thing to happen in terms of future protection. For some of you, not all of you, but you'll know if it's you, this situation is a kind of rehearsal, because you've got a big job to do, and that means that the kinds of people that you will meet are as chaotic as you've found me so far in this reading, because for some of you don't like me, and that's fine. And for others, it's like this person, these people will be irritants in a bigger way than what you're currently experiencing. And you will get animal messages in a bigger way than what you're currently experiencing. And by the way, I also feel called to say, don't watch all these stupid TikToks about animal familiars being spirits from the devil sent to spy on you from, you know, people who are anti-God. That's not what a spirit familiar is. And it's actually hugely hateful and religiously disrespectful to reappropriate the term spirit familiar or animal familiar to mean that, right? I know what they're referring to, but it's very rare that it happens, particularly in cultures without an indigenous magical practice where curse work is relatively common. If you're seeing an increased amount of a certain animal in your life, 9 times out of 10, whether you like that animal or not, it's a messenger for you. And the best thing to do is to look up the characteristics of that animal, how it feeds, reproduces, what its habits are, to sort of tap into some wisdom about the way that you could live in your own life. I feel called to say that because we're talking about, you know, things that you might not like having around kind of turning up to show you some stuff. And in my own experience in researching that, I came up against this idea of the spirit familiar being something which it's not, again and again, and I got really angry for my ancestors, you know, at this sort of misappropriation from the Christian community. Again, not anti-Christian. My ancestors were Christian syncretists, but, you know, it's worth saying, and maybe this is one of the only channels where we can say it. because we're not fully God botherers, and we're not fully sort of anti-God either, right? On that note, we are working with the Fallen Angels Oracle deck, but that doesn't mean I'm working with demons, or it doesn't mean I'm inviting parasitic elements or anything like that. It's just that within the rich and beautiful Judeo-Christian mythologies, there are a lot of descriptions of beings which are good representations of energies that we don't want around. So in order to understand the kinds of protective feelings we need to carry forth, it's good to have those energies present, no? So we're going to take 3 of these to start. I did reverse when I shuffled as well, just in case. But reversals aren't bad, they're just another set of meanings. If you see reversals in tarot, congratulations, you've got another 78 possible outcomes. This one wants to come. And finally, we're not going to go too far into the mythology of these, because this is partly an experiment to see how triggered people are by the fact that I'm using this deck. But for those of you who are up on your angelic, fallen or archangelic mythologies, feel free to look them up and put your findings in the comments. I might even do that myself, actually. Shax, danger of loss, Foras, celebration, and Arias, inspiration. Maybe it's you who's built up this world around yourself, because there's something here about a person entering in who could jeopardize everything you've created. So if it's not your ego death, I think you're dealing with a person who is very intimidated by the idea that you could huff and puff and blow their house down in an easy step, right? And for them, that's terrifying. Quite often when we encounter people who are irritating, they're just fearful, right? This 4S figure in the middle reminds me of the appearance of Saturn, and Saturn in astrology teaches us about fears and about restriction as both a gift and a sort of curse of fear, how we might self-restrict in order to inhibit ourselves from opportunities which are more frightening than a lack of opportunity. For some of you that's relevant. This is the Buffy deck, by the way, and I want to take this one this way and this one the way it came. Danger of loss with celebration and inspiration. There may have been a party recently or some kind of get-together, maybe a family thing, where you encountered this person and... Oh, all right, we're flipping, are we? What was I saying about reversals? Yeah, where you feel you should have been inspired, but instead you were stabbed in the back, right? This also, with this caduceus here, this could be a healthcare worker or somebody who, if you're the healthcare worker, take that as your confirmation. But if this is this person or this thing you need to protect yourself from, I think that it's notable that many narcissistic personalities actually end up being pillars of the community in some way. And quite often, that means that they go into fields like education, healthcare, philanthropy, similar, you know, elaborate as you see fit, because it gives them the acclaim of the community, so that it couldn't possibly be that the way that they treat people behind closed doors is actually so antithetical to the way that they present, right? It's the best alibi. And actually, 2 of the worst narcissistic personalities I've encountered in personal experience have been teachers and, you know, charitable people. And then one of them was a teacher and then like a lifelong healthcare and energy worker who sort of took up a position as a guru within the community as a way of shielding from how they treated the people closest to them and the absolutely terrible things that they'd accused others of, gaslit others about, prevented from happening, aided in happening, all kinds of awful stuff, right? So again, it's this idea that like, this could be a stabbing in the back from the person that either you least suspected or that the community would least suspect. And that's kind of by design. That's kind of why they've been drawn to professions or even roles within a friendship unit or a familial unit where they were seen as a healer. How fucked up is that? And I suspect that whether or not you identify actively as a healer or a light worker, if you're on this channel, you're sort of on that journey a bit. Don't want to freak you out or anything, but you are sort of doing some good for other people if you're here, because that's who I called in beforehand. And sometimes when we've had terrible experiences with people who identified as healers like this, we resist the call towards quote unquote healing professions because we see how much people can wear it as a mask and how much terrible stuff they can get away with by presenting as a light worker. And again, that may be why I have a problem with the term as well. But let me tell you that healing is not just straightforwardly applying medicine or laying on of hands or giving of advice or any of those other fantastic energetic things. It can be inspiring people, and that's the other message of this. You can be a healer by being utterly enthusiastic about the things that you love most in the world in a way that is infectious to other people and informs them of stuff that they wouldn't have found otherwise. You can be a healer by being an aesthete and surrounding yourself with beauty and dressing in beautiful things and sort of spreading beauty to others rather than falling into the vanity that the passages we discussed earlier were talking about, right? So you can be beauty obsessed in the sense of it being a gift to others rather than it being a sense that you want to appear beautiful because you want to do better than. There are lots and lots of ways to inspire. I'm not going to go over all of them, but again, some of you could be heads of a family or about to be heads of a family, or I mean, I'm seeing these and they look almost like a stalk. So for some of you, that's a very imminent possibility where you are going to inspire another person. And therefore it's really important that you have this trial run with somebody dodgy, or someone you perceive as dodgy, should we say, where you can learn to shield not just yourself but others in a communal setting from a person who is constantly afraid of losing everything and strikes other people because of that fear. Okay. 8 of Pentacles, 10 of Pentacles reversed, Wheel of Fortune reversed. Again, this person, and I'm feeling person rather than situation, but adapt as you see fit for a general reading. They were working hard on some kind of legacy, on some kind of reputation. And I think actually that, like, this is the Dracula episode, right? So not only are we literally depicting a vampire for the first time in this deck, which is about vampires, but also it's an episode which didn't get the most positive feedback at the time, right? I don't know whether many of you were out when Buffy aired, but when this came out, not many people were a fan. The Dracula casting, the introduction of Dawn out of nowhere when nobody had ever mentioned that Buffy had a sister, the new dusting effects on the vampires, which were different to the ones before, the pacing being slightly different, the lighting being slightly different. I remember when this came out because I'm an old bitch and it was not well received, right? So there's something here about somebody positioning themselves as the slayer, being watched by the watchful eye of a higher power, in this case a watcher, so they might even be of a kind of pagan ilk, because I'm now thinking watchtowers, right? Gregorian or otherwise. Not Gregorian. It's the word. Down in the comments if you remember, because my brain's doing a thing. Sorry, I did have a stroke, so sometimes it does that. This person, yeah, positioning themselves as under a higher power and slaying the demons, but you'll notice that this figure here, let me pick it up again. The figure she's actually slaying is a scarecrow. Now in this, because it's Buffy, I think it's a practice shot, but in the context of this reading, this person has been vanquishing things which are not actually there, They've been slaying demons, which they themselves have created, right? It may be that this person is very good with triangulation, very good with tarnishing the reputation of others in very sort of backhanded ways, stabbed in the back again, and sort of speaking about how terrible it is that such and such is this, and then making up a whole story where actually it worked out all right in the end because I had an intervention with them, and with my holy guidance, with my intervention, with my opinion, of course they came out all right in the end. So you have somebody who's willing to tear somebody else down just so that they can tell a story where they were the person building them back up. And of course, this isn't what happened remotely. The person was probably never bad to begin with. It's that this person, your antagonistic element, your adversarial element at the moment, needed to be the saviour, so they created something to fight against, which is very interesting again when we're talking about paradigms which introduced the adversarial into imagery and paradigms which had described darkness and shadow, but not evil, right? A lot of the things I've mentioned so far that will be a bit contentious for some of you are about a historic transformation religiously between something which was very earth-based and used the imagery that we'll all be familiar with of the horned man and of sort of working in darkness and all these other things, and then turned that imagery into evil, adversarial, bad, satanic, curse-related always, all that kind of stuff, when actually the dichotomy previously was not heaven and hell, it was heaven and earth, and both were good, right? And you can see a kind of similar thing playing out with this person's attitude to other people, where they take signifiers, so this figure in this religious imagery has horns, and they make it into they're a devil, right? Or to put it in more modern terms, this person has had a mental illness in the past, which was because of adverse circumstantial stuff that happened to them. So in my story, they're unhinged and mentally ill. Or this person in the past has had problems with addiction. So in my story, they're an addict and can't be trusted. Or this person in the past has found themselves in a circumstance where they had the choice to keep a child or not, entirely by accident, and they chose to keep that life. Again, not commenting on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing more broadly. But the narrative might be, oh, they had a child just for the clout of it, and now they're using all the money they get from the government, and they're treating their child like shit, and I'm here to save them. You can see how very quickly the most redeemed and relatively ordinary of circumstances becomes something that a person like that can twist into a different tale. And this is something I've been directly experiencing, hence the salt bath and hence the reading. And this is spinning, so I'm called to say work with tourmaline if it's your direct experience. But it's also something that I know happens to a great deal of people. And I want to go back to the original statement at the beginning of this reading. It's not about looking to what needs defending against, it's about embodying protection. So we can know all this, and we can know that it's bullshit and they're not slaying anything, and we can know that actually the wheel is turning and this isn't being very well received right now, and then maybe for the first time being seen as a little bit vampiric or criticised for the first time in a while. But none of that is us on a quest for, we're going to expose them for what they've done. The tide's turning now, bitch. I'm going to see how things play out when people know what you are. Do you feel the negativity that came through that? Do you feel how horrible it was when I went to those statements, right? Avoid readers who talk like that, by the way. Fuck that shit. And if I've ever talked like that before in my readings, point it out in the comments for me when you hear it. Be like, Lucy, sort yourself out, right? But yeah, so there is a person who incidentally has made these stories about others so that they have a monster to slay, who incidentally is having the wheel of fate shifting for them a bit, where they're no longer in control. They're sort of spinning wildly a bit out of control because at least one person, whether it be you or someone else, has said, this is a bit draining. Being around you is a bit vampiric, isn't it? I bet you thrive on their reactivity with the things that you say about them. I bet actually sometimes you say things just to rile them up so they explode and you can get the supply, right? There's someone, whether you know of the person or not, who's called this out. They've had the strength to because they're a lone wolf, right? Not the wolves. And because of that, there's an ego injury and the tide's turning. But I want you to resist the temptation, because we are working with Michael, etc., to think, yeah, tide's turning, hooray. You're getting what's coming to you, etc. Right? We're going to fuck that off for now and we're going to keep talking. So Chariot reverse, there's not much movement in this. Excuse me, I have a very, 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 very itchy leg. You might, I've mentioned sort of itching and rashiness and creepy crawlies. You might be itchy all over because of this. That's another sign like this is an irritant to give you a solution or to make you operate in a different way, right? The Chariot being Queen Cordelia, right, is also, again, somebody who could be described as quite shallow or operates in quite a shallow way. But bear in mind that if it's reversed, like Cordelia in Angel and in sort of later bits of Buffy, she does redeem herself. She does start to turn around. She actually becomes one of the key fighters against sort of dodginess herself, right? So it's not that this person is on a trajectory where they'll never be okay again or they'll never be an agent for good. I think it's more that it's not necessarily on your path to take them in that direction or to heal or fix them, or indeed to watch their downfall at a crisis point that may turn them that way, right? I hear some people say that it's not up to us to fix everybody. What I don't hear said nearly enough is it's also not for us to dance on the graves of those who've just had a crisis moment because of their behaviour. This reading is calling you out at this time as much as the person, right? Because you have been injured by this. You have felt awful about it, or you have worried about it and become fearful. And the situation should have acted as a sort of reminder not to fall into fear. Because this chaotic person, me screaming at the beginning of the reading, etc., is what you get with fear. Be very careful that you don't label other people as an entity that can't be saved. It's different to say it is this person's purpose and destiny to sting others at this time than to say, and they'll always sting and then they'll die. You're also stuck in this, and notice that the Chariot is kind of, because of the way the cards are placed, it's like the pivot point of the reading and it's under celebration. So it's like you could be out there partying and living your life, and 9, 10, 11, it could be like a master number situation, a situation of mastery for you, where you're having a great time and you're helping and teaching others along the way without even trying. But instead, thinking about all of this, going into it and sort of putting it in the paradigm that you did put it in, has had you stuck. The car is not moving. Cordelia is not moving. She's sort of holding the phone, but it's almost like she's not even talking to anyone. Two of Scythes, Two of Swords with Xander in, I think it's Xander, in a very strange outfit. Let me have a closer look. Oh no, it's not Xander. I forget the name of this character, but I will look it up and put it either like as an overlay or in the description afterwards. There's an inability to move in any kind of direction because of this, but it's at your end, not their end, right? The wheel is already turning for them. Justice is already being done. Your prayers are already being answered. Your spell work is already being answered. Your call just through mentally coming to this reading and being like, yeah, I'm going to stick it out and see what she has to say, is an energy which is being sent out and already acted upon. It is done. And yet you sit here with your two axes, possibly your two X's for some of you, like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know where to go. Temperance in reverse is a lack of moderation, alongside the Seven of Pentacles, which is a time for reflection. Notice that moderation is in a sort of motherly figure, living a very ordinary, perhaps humble life, but she secretly has a demonic mask on the wall, right? I can't remember the name of the episode, but this sort of lights up and calls in a load of dodgy stuff. And then the sort of flip of that is that the person who is reflective presents as demonic, right? So if all the stuff that I've said about angelic versus demonic paradigms is chiming in for you, perhaps this is a religious reevaluation that you're undergoing. And this situation has been a catalyst to say, well, do I really believe anybody's evil? Or do I really believe that I'm fully an agent of good? Or do I really believe that I need to fear this and that I'm not already protected? And then for others of you, this is speaking again to this situation of being bad-mouthed, reputation being tarnished, where somebody is being presented to other people as demonic, as terrible, as deficient, as even just like clumsy or overweight or, you know, a failure in some kind of way to this mouthpiece over here. Which is, you know, if you say it angrily enough, it does become an insult. And this is by a person who themselves is out of balance, even as they present well, right? Nothing against Joyce, just the imagery in the card. And then we're ending on the Six of Stakes. I'm hoping that's visible because I'm not setting up for this one. Again with the Scarecrow, and it's been attacked even more, right? There are now 6 stakes in it. I think the more this person tries to have their victory parade, which is the traditional Six of Wands imagery, the more everyone else is getting to see that there is nobody behind this villain. That it's actually just a doll, right? For some of you, if you know that this person is a practitioner of voodoo, anything sort of along those lines where they use dolls or puppets, that may be relevant, but I really don't want to breed fear with that, especially to an incredibly elaborate and beautiful set of very different religions, which use puppets in very different ways. So take that as it resonates, and please don't take the horror movie version, all right? But it might be a thing for some. Either way, I think like even if this isn't like a target specifically, even if you're not directly a scapegoat of this person's words, there is something here about the kinds of things they say about others, the kind of attack they go on, being the thing that exposes them. Because sooner or later, as I said earlier, if you sit back and you are innocent in all this, and you just trust, as the psalm was describing, right? You just say nothing and you kind of know that you're on the right side, but you keep stum. This person talks so much and they attack so much that eventually they're seen as being an attacker. They're seen as being on the defense. They're seen as somebody who needs to have a crusade to go on. And that is then freedom for whoever has been targeted, and the wheel begins to turn, right? It doesn't mean that this person's fate is to be healed imminently after this scenario, even. It just means that in this particular set of people, it's time for things to shift a bit so that the group become more aware of the fact that this person is not whiter than white. Sorry to use those terms, I know they're very problematic, but you know what I mean, right? They're not free of all negative intention themselves. Even using the word negative, it implies like, again, it's like the good and evil of words, isn't it? Positive, negative. For some of you, your crime, I'm hearing, is that you enjoy spooky stuff, horror films, genre stuff in general, as clearly I do, right? And what I want to say with that pull to the word negativity is it's not vibrationally wrong or negative or evil or inviting in parasitic or demonic elements to enjoy entertainment which explores the darker side of life or death, right? I actually think that some of the most grotesque horrors that I've ever seen are some of the most profound archetypal stories about the nature of the hero's journey or of the body or of relationships to the divine. You know, some of the people who've been derided over the years as torture porn misogynists or gore hounds or whatever you want to start with, such as, for instance, David Cronenberg, have some of the most profound things to say about what it is to be a person here on Earth in some of their films, right? And I think sometimes it takes a lens that has been through some shit to appreciate those stories as one would appreciate happier tales or even biblical allegory. I don't think any one myth is greater or lesser than the other in terms of the knowledge that it can impart, having the current of the divine within it. Because if we say that something is exempt from divinity, then we say that divinity made something which can be godless. And that's kind of a paradox, right? And again, coming back to some of the sort of stuff that we said about how certain traditions were reappropriated as devilish or satanic, we go to a story where God picks his favourite angel to do the worst of the worst and be his enemy. And, you know, it's almost like a love thy enemies thing, but on such a grand scale, on such a broader way of understanding the way that the world works. So I think what I'm trying to say is there is knowledge and divinity in everything, even the thing that frightens us, even the things that seem adversarial, whether they be a person and a small-scale situation, or an entire paradigm that gives us the willies and makes us think that people must want to do ill, right? I like the Force and Star Wars, right? The flaming sword of Michael as the lightsaber, because it describes something which is like what you might call God, which can be harnessed by certain individuals, which I think is true, you know, prophecy, etc. Or even healing, right? Energy healing. And which can also be harnessed by people lost or enmeshed in their passions in a less than groovy way, to do acts of, you know, I guess the Bible would call it iniquity, to do terrible things, right? To become Sith Lords. I think that's a really good description of how things are all connected, and you can kind of choose to do with it what you want to do with it. And hopefully, if you're on this channel, you're choosing to do good things with it, right? But that doesn't mean that there's any less of a capacity for other people to do the other thing. And if we can understand those people, within Star Wars paradigm, characters like Ahsoka kind of show us a pathway where we can heal them. And in a way, under the Christian stuff, didn't Jesus do that, right? Didn't he empathize so hard with sinners that they were healed? They were brought to a higher place, they were saved. Again, I'm sorry to trigger anybody with the use of that lexicon, but feel like it's relevant here, and I don't know whether that's because you're that side of religious, or because this person is, or just because it's a time where you're ready to hear me talk about those kinds of things and think on them from a more adult perspective, perhaps having had a background there. It is not about looking to what needs defending against, it is about embodying protection. So now my question to you is, if you didn't think that you needed to be protected from whatever this person says about you, or does, or prohibits you from in their scheming, or whatever it is, even if it's like firing energy at you, if you didn't think that they could suck your energy, if you didn't think that they could say anything bad about you that anyone would believe, if you didn't even think that they could bring confusion or indecision or stagnancy to you, or put you out of balance, or make you seem a certain way to anybody else, or kind of leave you out of the picture even, if you thought that there was no danger of loss for yourself, if you thought that all that you had left to do was celebrate your life, and that you were constantly inspired and never stabbed in the back because you were adequately protected already, what would you be doing next, my dude? Because that's the thing that you're going to do next. Spoiler alert, your day today, or tonight, or whatever, is about acting as if this person has no effect on your life whatsoever, as if this situation has no effect. And if you're on the unfortunate side where you've been praying or you've been casting because this whole thing has had an effect on somebody close to you that you want to protect, excuse me, hiccups, confirmation for some, or because they have directly attacked you in a way that prevents you from having a relationship or a job or a home or something like that, a family maybe, then what I want you to do is still bear with me and spend the day as if you have those things anyway. It's the acting as if thing again, but it's in a much more armoured magical sense. It's as if Michael is stood behind you, or Raphael, because Caduceus, right? Go where you see fit. If you're air dominant, Raph's a good one. But it's this thing of like, you may be a scorpion with a stinger behind you poised at me, but I am a person who doesn't give any fucks with someone with a flaming sword stood behind me. And I don't even need to be looking at what you're doing for me to be adequately defended and protected. So what I'm going to do is ignore you. And that is the greatest injury to somebody like this, by the way. If you can be non-reactive and ignore them, if you can grey rock them, for those familiar with that term, or just make them feel like they're not the most important or catalysing thing in any given room, if you can look the other way, I dare say, if you can turn the other cheek, that will make this person kind of implode upon themselves anyway, and they fume and vanish in a puff of smoke, right? It's really quite remarkable. The energies that I was taking salt baths against, I've tried all sorts of tactics with. I've done prayers to Michael, and then they've been, I want to say I did pacifist prayers to Michael, and I said, don't punish anybody, but whatever it is that's coming my way, making me feel like this, I'm holding up a mirror, send it back. And yeah, they were besieged by wasps in the middle of the night at a time where wasps aren't travelling. And they were inside as well, and they got a swarm in the bedroom, which I thought was quite funny because it happened at the exact time in the morning that I said my prayer in desperation, if I'm honest. But it worked, you know. And it wasn't a curse, it was just, do as you see fit with this person, but I don't want their energy anymore, so send it their way. Whatever they sent to me. Which, by the way, is a good one to use, because if they didn't send that much, nothing much will happen to them. And if they sent a lot, then they're going to have to deal with the karma of that. Sorry for the misuse of the term karma, but they're going to have to deal with the repercussions of that further down the line anyway, spiritually. So you're just accelerating the process, really. You're just kind of going, you know what, if you're going to send it out now, you're going to deal with it now. And that's part of your contract. So it's a good one to do. But anyway, the thing that sort of worked, other than the wasps, is being boring. I don't have any information to feed you. I'm sorry, my week was really dull. I just worked. Oh, but what about this thing? Did you see this person? How's your love life? How's your sex life? How's everything going with your business? All these things that could be trigger points, right? How's your weight? All these things that could be little areas to delve into, to either gather stories to weave to somebody else, or to poke at me to see where I'm reactive. And each time I would grey rock and I would say, oh, nothing much. Oh, I haven't seen that person in a while. Oh, nothing's really going on there. Oh yeah, it's good, steady, pretty boring. That is the best thing you can do at this time. But more than that, and first, I want you to just pretend that this person isn't even in your life, to the extent that that is possible in the environment that you're in. If you live with them, put some headphones on. Get out of the house for 5 minutes. Pretend that you never lived with them. If you don't live with them, just, silence their number. Spend a day without responding to them in any way, without interacting with anybody that you have in common, etc. And just do the things that you feel pulled towards, you feel guided towards, and see how healing that can be. And I think I'm hearing Mike Patton going, you might surprise yourself. That's exactly it. You might, right? You might surprise yourself. You might have a more spiritual experience for just doing the shit that you want to do without any of this being attracted in than you did from turning your attention to it in just as defensive and fearful a way as this person is operating from, albeit more compassionately from your end. When I say that you're fearful, or I say you're defensive, or I say that you're, ruminating on this, it's not to blame you and label you and say, oh, well, you're just as bad. It's to say that a little of their energy has been successfully passed on to you whenever that happens, and you don't have to allow it to happen. You are strong enough, if you are seeing this, to go, you know what? Not on my ship. No chance, mate. I see you, but I'm all right. How are you? You don't look good. Anyway, I'm going to move on, right? And if you can banish by laughter, that's great too. And many of you know how to do that. Many of you are chaotes or whatever that come to this channel, or hopefully anyway. I feel like that's not everything I needed to say. And as I've tried to pick up the deck, I've split it. So we're going to take the first 3 off the top where the split was. This has been very long, but clearly needed. The World, the Knight of Scythes, and the 3 of Chalices. For some of you, the next imposition of this energy, let's not call it an attack, the next irritation may be online and through friends, right? The World Wide Web, swift conversational elements, possibly from someone sarky and sassy, and then the involvement of friends in this sort of party celebration dynamic. So just be aware that that might be the arena, right? Those of you on things like Insta, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever you use, I don't know what the kids do these days, I'm old. It might happen there, right? And it might be in a way, I'm thinking of the call in Mean Girls, where like she's trying to bitch about the other girl while she's still on the call and make it seem like she didn't know what she was doing. It's that kind of a underhanded thing. But again, I want to take us back to Grotton's work in the dark and deep, and I want to take us back to, it's not about looking to what needs defending, it's about embodying protection. So this is giving you a heads up, right? Spirit wants to protect you, but also it's saying you needn't involve yourself in any of this. You don't even need to defend yourself to these people or in this environment. Because if you just do you, it will work itself out. Even if you get notification after notification that something's gone on, right? You can safely look at your phone in the energy that we're channeling right now and go, I see that the irritant is back to teach me how to deal with irritations so that I am better prepared to live my best life and shift to the energy that I've always wanted to be in. Thank you for inoculating me against anything which might actually do me harm. I'm now going to place my phone face down and continue to do what it was I was doing with joy and relish. Again, very Jesus-y to say, thank you for teaching me that. Bless you. See you later. What else do I want to say about these? I'm seeing this scowling demon in the world card. Like, they're all demons, but this one looks particularly... Ugh. So I think, again, it speaks to this idea that if you don't respond, that's probably better, right? Because it's just this person... It's like my wasp thing, right? If you're holding up a mirror and this person fires anger at you, or evil eye, or ill will, or whatever, all that can happen is that they see their own angry face and they either feel disgust or, fear or whatever, and they kind of run the other way because they don't want to look at it anymore. And then you're free to pull down the mirror and be like, wicked, let's get on. Knight of Scythes being glory, I think is fairly self-explanatory with the sort of energy that we're in if you're a Buffy fan. Also, I'm noticing this like radio tower, so that again, there's this, she's holding something as well that looks like the Lochnar in heavy metal, which you may not get all of those references, but what I'm trying to get at is that they're perpetuating something by transmission, which is like a catalyst for people going a bit lunar. Lunar is the nice way to say it. And then, the Three of Chalices and the celebration actually coming up together for you is fairly positive. I think that, if anything, the friendships or family members that you see as being under threat right now may be connections that are reinvigorated for you as a result of this experience. Because you know how, like you may not know because you might not be as sad as me, but I spent some time in my pick-me 20s years in sort of relationship coaching circles, just out of curiosity. And something they say is that if you help somebody out, they may feel ways about you and it's all grand, but if you allow somebody to help you out, they form a kind of chemical bond to you, right? And I feel that rings true here, in the sense that there may be friends that you don't see as being involved in this yet, or that you're not even like that close with at the minute, who come to your defense as a result of seeing this kind of scarecrow quality of this energy. And as a result of them feeling like, that's not what this person's energy is, you back off, they're actually reminded of their connection to you. And it may result in like social meetups, or increased time with this person, or some kind of closeness between you that was the exact antithesis of what this energy was aiming for, yeah? And then the world is class protector, right? It's another Michael Jedi figure. It's, I have you under my umbrella. I have you under my wing. I have you behind me while I hold the saber. The same sort of vibe, right? Or in the, we started with Dark Crystal. In the sort of Grotton world, it would be the Uru are chanting for you, or the kind of reunited Uru and Urskeks have blessings on you, or whatever it is, But there is, we're finishing really on a sense that you are protected. You've always been protected. I'm thinking of The Shining now, where he's like, you've always been the caretaker. You've always been here. It's this sort of, you're all right. You were all right when this started. It's been a bit foggy for me trying to tap into your energy because you're feeling out of sorts. but that doesn't mean that you're not in your power. It just means that you were a bit disoriented while you figured out the meaning behind this. Sometimes when we feel the effects of the equivalency of a psychic attack, whether that be just an intellectual attack on our personal psychological weak points or hang-ups or insecurities or whatever you want to call them, it's like the effect of that disorientation is a traumatic emotional flashback state, and we might misinterpret that as being disempowerment or a lack of ability to put the situation right. In this case, I don't think that interpretation is correct at all. I think it's okay to feel like you need to falter within a certain situation that's upsetting. It doesn't mean that you don't hold the power over it. Instead, it just means that somebody brought in something to your experience which was so new in its execution, at least, if not its energetic imprint, that you went, whoa, let me just right myself in order to deal with this. And then, quick as a flash, you dealt with it. It is done, right? Believe that it is done. Believe that you're okay. Believe that through this entire process, you have been protected. If you weren't, you wouldn't have found me saying these things, especially since I'm saying them at this time when I've had this string of experiences myself, coincidental to the way that you've had yours. There are a lot of events and quotes and imageries and chosen selections of cards and incenses and objects that all kind of coalesced in this moment for you to receive the exact message that you're receiving right now, whether or not you resonated with all of it. That is a demonstration of protection. That's your proof that something's got your back. Because something through me and my clumsy way of explaining things and shouting and singing and laying cards on a table has hopefully elucidated something for you and made it easier to manage emotionally, energetically. If that's the case, please let me know in the comments. Please like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. If you don't feel empowered, or you don't believe that you're protected, or you just don't like me, whatever, comment as well. I want to hear from you. I want to hear how I can improve, or, you know, where you think we're at, why you think that you found this, if you didn't fully resonate with it. That's useful too, okay? We're all here to grow. So, yeah, I hope that you can spend the rest of today knowing that this is fine, this is handled. You have things protecting you, and one of those things, which shouldn't be underestimated, is yourself.